Good afternoon. Lovely to see all of you here this afternoon. We have 5 sessions, including this one, and we'll be covering a few topics on lifestyle medicine. We'll try to keep it very simple, and you're allowed to ask questions. And I'll try my best to answer you, and if I don't, I'll go back, check out, and come back to you. Sounds fair? Yeah. Okay. We want to present to you evidence-based medicine, which means no hocus pocus. Okay? It is based on research that has been done, and I'll be giving you some evidence, obviously because we have due to lack of time, it won't be extensive evidence, but there'll be enough for you to be interested in what we're talking. And if you want more evidence, I'm more than happy to communicate with you and give you more research that has been done. I'll give you resources that you can check up on internet, so those of you who've got phones, you may be able to click it up, or if you want me to send you information by email, I'm happy to do that as well. All right? Okay, so we're going to start this Live Well workshop with our first topic being the world's healthiest diet. Do you want to know? Everybody wants to know nowadays what's the healthiest diet. And there are lots of them. I've just put up a few, supposed to be the 9 most popular diets rated by experts, and you must have heard of quite a few of them. Yeah, so you've got the Ketogenic Diet, the Atkins diets. They're kind of similar with low carb and high protein. Have you heard of that? Yeah. I would always advise my patients that it's not a good idea to go on to this diet. You will find that people who go on this diet, the Atkins and the ketogenic diet especially, they lose weight pretty quickly. But the problem is that they cannot sustain it. Okay, very high protein and low carbs. Your brain needs carbs, carbohydrates. The moment we talk about carbohydrates, we immediately say that's bad. But it's not so. It depends on what kind of carbohydrates you're talking about. So if you're talking about refined carbohydrates like, sugar that people love, that's not a good carbohydrate at all. But you can, the veggies, especially the tubers, are full of carbohydrates. But they are good carbohydrates because you have a lot of fiber that comes along with it. And when you have fiber in your diet, your absorption of sugar is a bit more controlled. And so diabetics, we know that those who have diabetes, we tell them to go easy on the carbohydrates, especially the refined sorts of carbohydrates. So you don't take refined sugar. You don't go ahead and have these biscuits and creams which are full of these sugars and so on. But you can have potatoes and kumaras. Now, talking about potatoes and kumaras, potatoes are not as good if you were to compare with kumaras, okay? Because, have you heard of the Glycemic Index? Yeah? So when you eat something, it gets absorbed in your intestines. And if you take like cubes of sugar or Coke or something, it's got very high amounts of sugar in it, and this sugar is basically refined sugar, so it gets absorbed very quickly. And your body is not able, so it spikes up. The sugar just goes up in your blood stream, and you're not able to bring it down well because it's so quick. And because you're releasing insulin to bring the sugar down, you overshoot, yeah? And then as the sugar starts coming down, it goes below what we would like it to be. And that makes people very irritable and angry. And they feel confused and get sweaty. And then what happens? They have got to have more sugar, right? So it becomes a yo-yo cycle. So low carb is not a good idea. You need to have a very balanced diet where your carbs should be adequate, okay? Now, how much is adequate is a matter of discussion, so we won't get into that, okay? You'll get a holistic picture as we go through the slides. Plant-based diet has become very popular. And many people, especially the young, who are pretty quick in understanding research and so on, and also because they want to save the planet, are choosing to go to plant-based diet. And I'll be giving you evidence as to why people want to do plant-based diets. So this is a journal that came through with this article called Nutritional Updates for Physicians and Plant-Based Diets. So this article says that physicians should tell their patients about the plant-based diets and the goodness of it. How many of your doctors, don't tell me who they are, but how many of them actually take time to talk to you about your nutrition and what you should eat and what you shouldn't? No, poor GPs. I'm a GP, by the way, so I'm not going to speak against GPs. It is hard. When patients come in, they've got their blood sugars going up and down, so you've got to adjust the medications, check the investigations, ask for more investigations, and then you want to talk about your hair falling out, and you want to talk about the pimple on your chin, and after we have gone through the shopping list, we come through with no time to talk about diet, which perhaps is the most important part of meeting a patient. Okay, so don't blame your GP. Make an appointment with him and go just to talk about diet. He'll talk to you quite a bit. And many GPs, like me, are not quite trained in nutrition. So those of us who have special interests, we have to read up. We have to do courses and so on, okay? So your poor GPs are doing the best they can for you. And this is what came through. Healthy eating may be best achieved with a plant-based diet, which we define as a regime that encourages whole, plant-based foods and discourages meat, dairy products, and eggs, as well as all refined and processed foods. You understand what processed foods are? Okay. Research shows that plant-based diets are cost-effective. Now you may say, it's so much more expensive to buy veggies than meat. Well, actually, you can grow some of your own. You can share with your neighbors, and even if it is a bit more expensive, you'll pay less to us GPs because you'll be healthier. And so on the long term, you're not going to lose out. You actually will be healthier and happier, okay? So it helps in lowering the body mass index, which is your weight, blood pressure, HbA1c, which is what we measure for diabetics, and cholesterol levels. They may also reduce the number of medications needed to treat chronic diseases and lower ischemic heart disease mortality rates. What that basically means is, if you go for plant-based foods, it'll be easier for your doctor to manage your blood pressure and your sugars, and you'll start getting fitter, okay? I have had so many patients who listened to me, and because they listened to me, I could help them out, and they started getting more fit as they went more for plant-based diets, and we actually came off of their blood pressure medicines. And diabetics, some of them we got them off, especially if they're on tablets. Some we could reduce the dose that they were on. Some were on high doses of insulin, and I could help them to come down to a minimal dose of insulin because they were not able to manage any further. Physicians should consider recommending a plant-based diet to all their patients, especially those with high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. Despite all the evidence I show my patients, some of them say, no, I have to have my meat and 3 veggies. So I'm from Southland. Yeah, meat is a big thing in our community. I wonder if that's true for you here as well. Kind of, yeah. So I give them all the advice and they say, no, I can't. I'm happy with my pills. Well, if that's how you feel, that's fine. You just make your GP rich and he'll keep giving you the tablets. Let's start with a study that was done in New Zealand. It was called the Broad Study. And this is a very I thought we should talk about our home and what is going on here in New Zealand. So this was a community-based program. This was led by a general practice in Gisborne. And the subjects were 35 to 70 years old. And they were diagnosed with obesity or overweight. And they had either one or more of these problems: diabetes type 2, ischemic heart disease, hypertension, so those are the short forms I put in, and hypercholesterolemia, which basically means your cholesterol levels are higher in your bloodstream. So there were 32 in the control group. What that means is there were 32 people who just were allowed to eat what they wanted as they were living before. So they didn't make any changes in their food habit, okay? And there were 33 in intervention, which means 33 of them were taught how they could change what they were eating. You see, you need a standard to compare with the people who have made a change in their lifestyle, okay? We are seeing making a change, does it make any difference or not? And so what they found that, by the way, these people who were advised to make changes, who agreed to make changes to their diet and lifestyle, they were given lectures twice a week for 12 weeks. And they ate whole food plant-based diet. So whole food plant-based means, if I talk to you about having plant-based foods, you can live on potato chips and some cabbage every day. That's plant-based, would you say? Yeah, but is that healthy? No, it's processed. So that's why we say whole food. So you're not refining things. You're not going to have white bread. You're going to go for brown bread. You're not going to have orange juice, but you will have oranges. Okay, for example, to make an glass of orange juice, you may need 3 oranges. How many of you would sit down and eat 3 oranges? It's a bit difficult, won't you? You would eat 3? Oh, you good? So this was the criteria, and they checked the people in 6 months, and then some who were eager to check more, they checked them again after, extended it for a year. And this is what they found. Don't bother reading the whole lot, it's a bit too much, I think, for today, but you'll read on top, it says that 6 months, mean BMI reduction was greater. So when they checked the people who made the changes in their diet, they had lost weight. We are not going to go into the details of how much, okay? But there was a difference. Have you ever heard of this man, Caldwell Esselstyn? Yeah. So he used to work in America. I think he's retired now. He proved through research again that if people have heart disease, you know what happens, right? The heart has these blood vessels which supplies blood to the heart. And you can see those blood vessels there. You see these blood vessels? And these blood vessels can get blocked. And when it gets blocked, so for example, if it gets blocked here, then the muscle beyond won't receive oxygen because there's no blood flow. And that area dies. Okay? So what do doctors do? What do cardiologists do? If it's blocked badly, they would do an angiogram, okay? Which is basically a tiny tube put through the arteries. Could be in your hand or could be in your groin. It goes all the way up to your heart, and they would put it through these little entry of the arteries and put some dye there that'll lighten up their vessels. And they would see where the blockage is, and then they will take a little stent and put the stent in. You can put stents for large arteries, higher up. You can put stents. You can do a bypass. So if this is blocked here a large amount, you can do a bypass from other places into the area beyond. But what do you do for tiny arteries? There's a limit to which we can put the stents. So what happens is then, when the artery gets blocked, you're going to have muscles that are dying. If they manage to put a stent in, that's great. But if they can't put a stent in, then there's nothing more they can do but give you tablets. So how do you reverse this process? How can you do that with lifestyle? So this is what the doctor did. He says that if you change the diet and give them grains, legumes, vegetables. Legumes are pulses like chickpeas. Have you eaten dal anytime? Do you like Indian? Okay, dal, chickpeas, kidney beans, that's right. So these are, absolutely. So these are legumes, okay? Pinto beans and all those kind of things, okay? With vegetables and fruits, what will happen is slowly these arteries will unblock and blood will flow better, okay? And he did some studies, and this is pretty interesting. So if you were to look at me through a scan, a scan where you go in, and you're standing at my leg end and looking up towards my head, and you cut it through like this, through my heart. You're looking from the leg end up that way. That's the heart. This is the left side, and that's the right side. This is the left ventricle, as we call it. Yeah, heart has chambers. This is the left ventricle. You see this portion? It is not lighted up because there's no blood flow there. This person went on a plant-based nutrition intervention program for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, they did the same study. You see how that is lighted up now? Yeah. So these are the studies they did. Look at this study. This is again or coronary artery or artery of the heart. And you see this portion? It is blocked. This person was he chose to go through a plant-based nutrition intervention. After 32 months, so this is about 2.5 years later, they repeated it, and do you see what's happened now? Okay. So what happens is people who have small vessels blockage, you can't unblock it. And for them, medications is necessary. True, I won't say don't take medications, but if you make changes in your diet, it's going to make a big difference. Actually, your symptoms may become a lot better, may even go away. Okay, this is scientific research being proved here. Have you heard of this study called the China study? Okay, this is on the internet. You can Google the China study. You can download a PDF of this book. Okay, it's good to read. It's a 400-page book, but it's worth reading if you have the time. So this is what happened. A few universities got together. One of them was in China, and they collected the data over a span of 20 years, and they had about 6,500 adults. And they got a lot of information from them. They put them all together, and these are some of the results they got. Animal protein promotes the growth of cancer. We will talk a bit about cancer later on, 1 week. They also found that the heart disease can be reversed through nutrition, and that was what we were discussing a little earlier. And if you have high processed carbohydrates, they're bad for you, but plant foods are full of healthy carbs. Okay, so you want to have carbs, plant foods are the best. Protection against diabetes, obesity, autoimmune disease, bone, kidney, eye, and brain disease. If you have plant-based diets, again, you have better chances of not going in for these diseases. Nutrition that is truly beneficial for one chronic disease will support health across the board, which basically means that you don't have to worry, I have to take cauliflower to prevent breast cancer, I have to take peanuts to prevent prostate cancer. No. If you go and eat the best of the plant food world that we have, you'll be covered for just about everything. Okay? And the people who ate the most animal-based foods got the most chronic disease. People who ate the most plant-based foods are the healthiest. So this was a report that came through from that study. Have you heard of blue zones? Yes. And in that blue zone, the article that was in National Geographic, we had the Adventist health study. Now, I'm an Adventist, so I'm very proud to present this study. The research is showing some great results coming through. So there were about 5 studies that were done. And one of them was called the Adventist Health Study 2. And they did the research over 96,000 people. That's a lot of people. Most studies, maybe 100, 200, 500, 5,000 or 10,000, because it's expensive to do these studies. But when they did the study for 96,000 Adventists, and they got a lot of information, and what they found is what they ate made a big difference to their risk of having heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and so on. This was a published study in the National Library of Medicine from this Adventist health study. Okay, they focused on a few matters, and what they found is Adventists over the spectrum, some are vegans, that is plant-based. Some eat eggs and dairy. Some would eat fish along with plants, and some are non-vegetarians, basically eating like the rest of the population. So they could compare, as they followed through these populations, how healthy each group was. And the results came through that non-vegetarian diet were compared to vegetarian dietary patterns, which was the vegan and the lacto-ovo-vegetarian. And what did they find? That the risk of those who were plant-based was a lot lower compared to the non-vegetarians, and even lower compared to those who were vegetarians who ate eggs and dairy as well. And you see the BMI. So non-vegetarians' BMI is more in the overweight category, and the plant-based people, as you see there in the green, is 23.6, which is in the normal range. This is on an average. And also they found the cancer rates low, the colorectal cancer rates low. You find men living up to 7.3 years longer. How significant is that? 7.3 years longer. And women were living 4.4 years longer. This was in California at the Loma Linda area. They also came to the conclusions that, rather, they saw correlations here, that eating legume was protective and heart attacks were less if you're eating a few nuts several times a week. Wholemeal bread instead of white bread reduced heart attack risks. Drinking water, as simple as that, makes a big difference to your heart attack risk as well. You know, when you talk about meat, we usually talk about cholesterol. Yeah, if you have high cholesterol, you've got a high risk. What we don't talk about is there are so many other factors that are related. One of them is your meat, as it's getting digested in your stomach, it produces certain chemicals. So the trimethylamine is what we call it, becomes an oxidized component. Never mind all those details, but it increases your risk for atherosclerosis and cardiovascular events. So these are some of the resources I've put on there. I found some good articles here if you want to check them out, because I understand I'm not able to tell you everything today, but just giving you some insights. I like to read this book because I find that so reliable. It was written 150 years ago. And you know, most of the information that I'm telling you was told 150 years ago. You know, at Loma Linda, we found there was a population who were, you know, plant-based and some were vegetarians. Now you may ask, how and why? Why do Seventh-day Adventists do this? It's because we had a pioneer who told us that the best way we can be healthy was to have plant-based foods. And those who listened to it over the past 150 years ago, you know, that has passed by, they have definitely benefited because of that. And that's why you see in Loma Linda, those who follow the health principles that Adventists have propagated, they seem to be living longer. So I'm just giving you a few quotes. And by the way, this book is available if you want one copy. So if you want to read that through, you're most welcome to grab one. Vegetables, fruits, and grains should compose our diet. Not an ounce of flesh meat should enter our stomach. The eating of flesh is unnatural. This was 150 years ago. People laugh at you if you were to say things like this in those days. But today science is coming through. You know, even when I was in medical school, we had this false myth that you have to take meat to have iron. That is not true. Plant foods have enough iron. You eat, you know, a balanced diet. Same with all vitamins and minerals and all that. The only thing that is still in debate is vitamin B12. Okay? Same with your calcium and all those that we need. People are continually eating flesh that is filled with tuberculosis and cancerous germs. No one related eating meat with cancer in those days. But this is coming to pass.